Every combat sport athlete faces a critical decision before stepping into the ring: to cut weight. But at what cost? This documentary takes you inside the world of weight cutting in combat sports, revealing its true impact on athletes. Weight cutting is a common practice in combat sports where athletes rapidly lose weight before a weigh-in to compete in a lower class. This is typically done in two stages: a gradual reduction of body fat over time, followed by extreme methods of rapid weight loss in the final days before competition. These methods include dehydration through sauna suits or sweatsuits, fasting, and cutting carbohydrates. The goal is to regain the weight after the weigh-in and enter the fight larger and stronger than the opponent. However, this practice comes with serious risks such as dehydration, fatigue, impaired performance, and long-term health issues. Weight cutting is most commonly practiced in all combat sports, mainly boxing, wrestling, taekwondo, and mixed martial arts.
Vision Quest 1985 is a classic sports drama that follows Loudon Sweeney, a high school wrestler who sets out on a personal mission to drop weight and defeat the toughest opponent in the state. But with this training and dropping weight comes with the effects of the process. The movie shows how all the good things that comes to people as a wrestler, but there is another side to the story with weight cutting. Afterwards of the movie's release, wrestling had seen a spike in popularity than before, that more people wanted to be like the main character and thought if they were a wrestler that dropped weight in their life would be like his. But many don't know the side effects that many go through the process of weight cutting. It can be grueling and dangerous.
All right, so my name is Cal Fusham. I'm here with Master Craig Brown. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, sir?
Yeah, sure. Yep, so my name's Master Craig Brown. I am fifth dan in Taekwondo. I am an Olympic athlete. I competed for Team GB Great Britain for 13 years, from 2001 to 2013-14. And then I competed for Team Jamaica from 2013 to 2017. I went to Athens 2004, competed for Great Britain, and now I run Impact Taekwondo based in Milton. And so we run traditional programs. We run also an Olympic program which gives athletes like Cal a chance to make team represent Team USA and also work towards maybe one day maybe making Olympic team.
So what has been your experience with weight cutting in your sport?
So there's never been a time when I didn't have to weight cut. So I basically weight cut for almost every single event I did. And so I have cut as much as 20 pounds for an event. I've cut 20 pounds in the space of 2 weeks before. So I've done it healthy ways and I've done it unhealthy ways. So through that, I've learned my body and I've learned the best ways to do it. But I've cut for a good 17 years for competitions.
I'm Jason Cherry and I am interviewing Charlie Slate's mom about weight cutting today. Do you know any harms to weight cutting or positives?
Usually it would be dehydration, loss of electrolytes, loss of protein.
How does dehydration from weight cutting affect athlete's performance?
So weight cutting is like a supply and demand. So if you don't have enough fluid, you don't have enough fluid in your blood to be able to bring the oxygen to your muscles and your organs. And if you don't have that, you're going to end up with some lightheadedness, you're going to end up with weakness, you can go into kidney malfunction. So that's how it's going to affect the athletes. They're not going to perform as well.
And how can certain nutrients affect your health also?
So we would definitely recommend, if you're going to be doing some endurance training, that you're going to be doing hydration with water as well as electrolytes, because when you sweat you lose salt or sodium, so you need to replenish that. We also recommend a lot of high protein in your foods so that you can develop a little more muscle mass to hold you. I look more at dehydration as it affects all of us, but especially actually as you age, because once you're dehydrated, again, having to do with supply and demand. If you don't have enough fluid, you're not going to have enough blood supply. Your heart has to pick up the pace to get it to go everywhere, which can send your heart into an irregular rhythm. So a lot of my patients will end up back in the hospital because they end up either with some kind of irregular heart rate or they'll end up with kidney dysfunction.
How common is weight cutting in Taekwondo compared to other sports?
Obviously, it's very, very common. It's very common in combat sports, I would say. So I mean, I'd say the majority of sports, whether it's boxing, wrestling, Taekwondo, you generally want to come in at the top of your weight. So you don't really, most people won't weigh in and compete at the weight they walk around at. Say you compete at, well, let's say minus 80, you're 176 pounds. So if you're coming, and there's always like a window, all right? So, I mean, the weight category I used to compete in was between 72 kg and 80 kg. So that's 8 kilos. That's anything from like 16 pounds, something like that. So if I was fighting minus 80 and I weighed 76, that means I'm already giving away 4 kilos, naturally. But most people would fight at 80 and be something like 84 or 86. So if I competed in a weight category at 176 pounds, I could potentially be competing against someone that's 185, 190 pounds once they've weighed in and they've rehydrated themselves.
I'm Carson, and I'm here with
Alexander Alexis.
captain of Milton High School wrestling team, and we're going to be talking about weight cutting and its effects. Alex, at your time at Milton High School, being the wrestling captain and wrestling all 4 years, how has weight cutting affected you over the years?
During mostly this year and last year, I got kind of close with weight a couple times. It's been off and on. Some days it's been really bad where I was really over, and some days it's been alright where I was really under.
What side effects have you experienced weight cutting?
There was this one time when we were going against that one team, it was Atlanta, but I didn't eat, I forgot to eat. And during the match, I was so tired, so gassed. I couldn't perform to the best of my ability.
What are your primary methods used to cut weight in combat sports?
My primary methods, I like wearing lots of layers, putting on lots of layers, and then a jacket, hoodie, and then running up and down the stairs. That's what it is.
And can you take me through any more experiences you've had on how weight cutting has affected your performance and mental state in your sport and just your everyday life?
Well, there was this one time when we went to Boston Lion Academy. I was 3 to 5 pounds overweight, and then I was running around the whole school, spitting in trash cans, and it kind of stressed me out a little bit. Cause I was worrying about what my weight was gonna be. When we got on the scale, I took almost everything off. I only have my singlet on, just make the weight. I made it, thankfully.
Yeah.
That's stressful.
Going back to that mental aspect, not only physically draining, but what's the mental side of weight cutting, and does it drain you mentally, and how does that feel going through a match or going just through a week of school, weight cutting and being drained physically and mentally?
It's stressful. You're always thinking about sometimes when I ate lunch, I was can I even eat this? Am I still gonna be on weight at meet just after lunch? Just after school, and I have to worry about what I'm gonna eat. So it can be stressful a little bit when you have to think about both your school and your activities. Yeah.
Do you think dehydration plays a key role in how you feel during your weight cuts, and do you try to stay on top of it?
Whenever I do my weight cuts, I try to make sure I'm not cutting too much because I don't want to end up collapse on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I do my weight cuts, I end up taking little swigs of water to make sure there's still a little bit of water in my system, so I'm not completely dried out.
What are some of the effects of weight cutting on athletes' mental health, like pros and cons?
You have to be really careful with weight cutting because what can happen sometimes is it can get pretty addictive, you know. And sometimes athletes can get really concerned or about their weight to the point where they're checking it compulsively. And sometimes athletes can revert to unhealthy ways of doing so. Like some athletes might make themselves sick, you know, to make weight, or they might deprive themselves too much. And that's where you've got to be really careful with it. You've got to do it in the right way, and you have to make, you know, you always got as me as a coach, I'm always looking at making sure that if athletes are going to cut weight, it's never going to be really young kids, you know. And if it is a teen, an older teen, it's never going to be a huge amount, you know, because you always want to make sure that you're protecting them as they grow. And you don't want them to develop an eating disorder. So when it comes to like really large amounts of weight that you might find adults might cut, you know, you wouldn't want to do that with a lot of athletes, because there is the risk that, you know, if the weight's not coming off and the competition is a couple of weeks away, you know, you'll get athletes that might revert to other ways of doing so out of desperation. Sometimes people might think that it's a risk to cut weight, but it might be even more of a risk to go into a competition and come against someone who could be 15, 20 pounds heavier than you on the day when you actually compete.
So what does your primary diet look like during the wrestling season, and like how would it change on and off season and on and off weight cut?
Well, during season, I tend to not eat as much because I don't know, I just like tend to not eat as much, and I have to eat weight a bunch of times. So, and out of season, I eat like a lot more. I tend to eat like a lot more fatty food, burgers and stuff. But during season, I tend to like eat like rice, maybe like chicken every now and then. You know.
Do you feel that having a mental impact on you at all?
Not really, because usually like after like a big meet, after a Saturday meet, I usually like get some like food with my system.
Have you seen athletes successfully perform better after cutting weight?
Absolutely. One of the good things about cutting weight is you have to train, you know, so, you know, and so you end up, a lot of athletes when they're cutting weight, they'll be putting a lot more cardio, they'll be putting a lot more intervals, you know, they'll be putting in a lot more work, because you got to shift that weight, and there's only so much weight you can shift quickly by dieting. There's only so much weight you can shift quickly by restricting calories, you know, but you can lose a lot more weight by working hard, you know, and so that working hard has the dividend of you getting great shape. So the benefit of cutting weight is the work you have to put in is can put you in phenomenal condition.
Is there a way to cut weight safely and still compete at a high level, and if so, how?
Absolutely. I mean, you can just cut weight gradually by, you know, watching the calories you burn working out, watching the calories you eat, and trying to keep it a little bit less than that. And then you can gradually lose weight. So you can always do it safer by just like you starting early, starting weeks out, you know, and gradually cutting. That's one way. Also, I think there's a disconnect about when you're losing weight as a general member of the public and you're losing weight as an athlete. You know, I mean, sometimes when people are on weight, people that are just losing weight, like just, you know, just for their health, they'll talk about losing 1-2 pounds a week. You know, athletes lose 1-2 pounds in a session. I mean, you can lose a pound or two by going to the toilet. Do you know what I mean? If you're really monitoring your weight regularly, you'll see your weight pounds-wise can fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. And as an athlete, if you're layered up with clothes and you do a 2-hour session, you can lose 2 kilos. You can lose 4, 5, 6 pounds in a session. You can. And then just you hydrate and then put it back on. So when it comes to cutting weight, like right before the competition, right before the weigh-in, if you just put your sweat stuff on and just train, an athlete can lose 2 kilos just like that. So I think there's a lot of when you're not in a weight category sport and you're not educated on it, people can look at it as in, oh, you're really putting yourself at risk, this, that, and the other. But if you are an athlete and you have trained and you know you can lose 2 kilos like that,
All right, so moving on. What are some of the risks or negative effects you've witnessed from weight cutting?
So risk-wise, I feel like you can be more prone to injury. Sometimes people can pass out because they're not hydrating themselves. So it's really important you do it correctly. I'd say mental health-wise, not necessarily permanent, but while you're cutting weight and you're deprived, you start to be very grouchy. You can be not the best to be around because it really affects your mood. So you can be like you can be quick to respond negatively. You can be touchy. Like if someone says the wrong thing, people can athletes can respond in ways they wouldn't if they were eating properly, if they weren't cutting weight. So I think that mentally there is the injury risk. And if you do it wrong, you can feel deprived the day of the event. If you do it wrong, if you don't rehydrate and carb load or rehydrate before you compete, then it can really negatively impact your performance as well.
All right, so moving on to the last question. Do you think Taekwondo tournaments should have stricter rules to limit dangerous weight cuts?
Well, they do have some rules now. So they have a random weigh-in which kind of means that every athlete needs to be concerned that, if they cut too much and then if they put too much back on, like when they carb load and they rehydrate, if they put like too much on and they get asked to do the random weigh-in, there's a random few athletes will be asked to weigh in again, just to confirm that they haven't gone, I think it's more than 2 kg, 4 to 5 pounds over what the weight they're competing at should be. So there's always that risk that they could be called up. So I think they've got better. When I was competing, they never had that. So there was times when I put 10 kg, like I'd weigh in at like 75, and then on a competition day I'd be like 83, 84. So I'd put like 10 pounds back on, 12 pounds back on the day when I compete from what I weighed in at. That people can take the risk and that can happen, but I think that the safety things, the protocols they have in now reduce that. So I think in Taekwondo they're doing their due diligence in trying to prevent that.
Found within high school wrestling, a significant portion of wrestlers, often 60 to 90%, engage in some form of rapid weight loss, also known as weight cutting, before competitions. While rules and guidelines are placed to promote safe practices, many wrestlers still attempt to drop weight quickly, sometimes up to 5% of their body weight in a short period. These practices have both physical and psychological consequences, including decreased performance, increased risk of injury, and potential health complications. Weight cutting isn't banned in high school wrestling, but it is heavily regulated to ensure athletes' safety. The National Federation of State High School Associations and state associations have implemented rules and guidelines to discourage excessive weight loss and promote healthy weight management. The MIAA aligns with the National Federation of State High School Associations guidelines, which focus on minimizing the risks associated with rapid weight loss. Key components of the MIAA's weight management program include hydration and body composition testing, minimum body fat standards, weight loss limitations, and certification process. These regulations include limits on weekly weight loss, mandatory hydration tests, and minimum body fat requirements. Completely banning weight cutting could be challenging to enforce and might lead to unintended consequences, such as athletes attempting to circumvent the rules. By implementing structured guidelines and monitoring, the MIAA aims to educate athletes and coaches about safe weight management and reducing the reliance on dangerous practices without imposing an outright ban. Our overall takeaway is that while weight cutting is often seen as a necessary part of combat sports, its impact on the mental and psychological health is too serious to ignore. Beyond the physical strain, the process can lead to anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and long-term damage to an athlete's relationship with their body and food. What starts as a performance strategy can quickly become a mental health crisis if not managed correctly. If combat sports are to evolve, the conversation must shift not to just making weight, but to making athletes' well-being to the true priority. After seeing this documentary, what do y'all think about weight cutting? And should weight cutting be banned across all ages of high school wrestling?